At the end of the day, do you ever feel like, oh, I should have done more? I'm pretty sure almost every entrepreneur has felt that before. Our level of productivity needs to be better, faster. Well, more than likely, most of the things that you're doing can be taken off of your plate and delegated to someone who probably actually likes doing it more than you do also. I want to introduce my sponsor, Belay Solutions, and actually 3 different people recommended them to me before I'd ever heard of them before for this sponsorship. 2 of them were millionaires because they highly recommended me recommending it to my clients. They are bookkeepers, virtual assistants, social media strategists that can take this off of your plate. It's one of my favorite things. And one of the first things I do with clients is taking things off their plate. I had a client a few weeks ago and we took bookkeeping off of his plate and he was like, I hated doing bookkeeping. It's amazing. And they do a better job and it wasn't even that expensive. And yet I was holding on to it because that's what I've always done. Don't be like that. You can be way more effective in your business when you know what you're good at and know what you can delegate. So one of the things that Belay Solutions wanted to give you guys is a free download. It's called Your Personal Guide to a Productive Work Week. So this is all about you and how you can actually be more effective. If you want to check it out, go to belaysolutions.com/million. Go pick it up today. So that way this week will be better than all the previous ones. Now on to the show.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I am Jaime Masters, and I am so grateful to have my previous mentor who I used to look at as the guy that I quit my day job for, Dan Miller, who runs 48days.com. And this is the 10th anniversary of 48 Days to the Work You Love. But he came out with a 20th anniversary one that I already gave away to people because I thought it was so good. So thank you. There we go. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Dan.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm always delighted to have conversations with you, Jaime.
Oh, gosh, whenever I was telling people that you were on the show, I'm like, I know, but I remember reading the book before I quit my day job. It's still so potent it feels like a very long time ago now, but it was so potent at the time to meet you when I met you going, he wrote the book, right? He was the guy. And I've given away many copies since then, as you can tell. So how long? It's been 20 years now since you wrote the book?
It has 20 years. It just seems amazing. And of course, there's a long life for any book. I've updated it every 5 years. So updated it in 2005, 2010, and 2015, and then 20. And I'm already making notes because so much has happened. I'm making notes for the 2025 edition.
That's what I was thinking, that the book its longevity has lived through a lot of things, more than my children have. So tell me about where you see it sort of landing right now. We were just talking about how 2020 is kind of crazy. Are people really receiving it in the same way that they did at the beginning?
Totally. Because of the name recognition, it really helped, of course, with the prep. So when it came out, and having written it at the end of last year, and then came out in May of this year, but it looked like I was a genius in that I prepared for the kind of things that we're dealing with now. Now, here's just a little kind of background on the book. So the core concept is to look internally first. Look at how you're uniquely gifted, what your skills and abilities are, your personality tendencies, your values, dreams, and passions. Knowing those, then you get a clear focus for what the work ought to look like. That part of the book has remained the same for 20 years. So that's still the process. So about 30% of the book is still what was there 20 years ago. But the 70%, look how the work environment has changed so dramatically and accelerated exponentially this year. So I talk about things like being a digital nomad, working when you're traveling, not having a location, not having to go to the office, and other kind of things that, are really appropriate, especially this year. So it's been received extremely well. I've been fortunate to get a lot of interviews and a lot of buzz around the book at this point.
Well, because they all love you. I remember reading it back then and thinking now I had kids, but the digital nomad side was always like, oh, that sounds amazing. And it seems so far away. But nowadays, that's what most things are, like, especially nowadays. It's all digital. So you can really do whatever you want. Are you finding like the landscape is more crowded, though, for people trying to do similar things?
Well, yes, kind of. But there's a qualified yes, because even though a lot of other people are doing it. I mean, if somebody has never heard of pizza, it's really hard to open a pizza place. If there's already Papa John's, Little Caesars, and Pizza Hut, then it's easier to come in to just do it a little bit better. So the same is true now. Yes, there are a lot of people moving into new work models, but it doesn't take that much to distinguish yourself, to stand out, even with more in the same space.
Well, I especially feel like even when you're in business, because reading the book back then was one thing, but the concepts now, even in business, it's like an ever evolving game of leveling up your strengths, right? You're like, oh, I'm good at this. Oh, but then everything else sort of shifts as you evolve as a person. So I know beforehand, when I never did interviews before, I was like, oh, actually interviews I'm kind of good at. It's kind of fun, right? But then I try this, then I try this. I feel like it's not a one and done game, right? Do you feel like you're still evolving in what your unique abilities are?
Oh, totally. Totally. And I love that process. And of course, that's so typical of the entrepreneurial lifestyle is we look for things that are new. We don't expect things to be predictable and the same. We thrive in these kind of environments. So the fact that things are changing, that's a positive. I mean, if things ever get to be really predictable and the same, I'm in trouble because I'm going to get bored real quick. It is the thrill of the unknown that gets me up every morning. And somebody asked me recently about, uncertainty. Can we ever get used to uncertainty? I said, my gosh, entrepreneurs eat uncertainty for breakfast. It's what brings us to life. It's almost by definition what a leader is. If you want to just keep things the same and do things the way they've been and return to normal, you're a manager, and that's fine. I mean, we need managers, but leaders by definition go into areas where it's unknown. There's some risk. We aren't sure if it's going to work. And by definition, that's what a leader does. And I love that kind of environment and certainly want to be identified more in that arena than the prior.
What's changed for you, like internally in your business? Do you feel like you've shifted a lot in the last 20 years since the book was written?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I could have never designed or dreamed most of the things that I'm doing today. Now, first and foremost, I love writing. I really do. I love writing. But even the application of that has changed dramatically. As you know, the whole book arena has changed dramatically in 20 years. But here's a good example. 3 years ago, the county that I was living in Tennessee came to me. We had on our property a converted barn that we called a sanctuary, and we had events there. We had marvelous events there. So we had events for writers and for coaches and people who wanted to turn their dreams into reality. We would have 7 events a year. We capped them at 60 people. That's what we could crowd in our little barn that we had, where everybody had lots of fun. And they would pay $1,000 for that. So you can do the math on that. It's a pretty significant chunk of income. The county, after 12 years of doing that, the county came to me, slapped my hands, said, you cannot have events on your property. I didn't know I was doing anything. I mean, we're just having a good time on my property. It's like a big party, right? They said, you cannot do what you're doing here anymore. There was a front page article that came out on the Tennessean, Nashville, Tennessean on a Sunday morning that showed me on our property this wonderful retreat center that we had created. And the county saw that and said, you absolutely cannot do that. So that requires, taking a fresh look. What am I going to do? And I said, well, how can we continue to get people together to share ideas, the synergy of coming together and sharing ideas? What could we do that would not limit it to 60 people, but we could grow even beyond that? And we saw this online community phenomenon taking shape. And I said, let's do that. So we created an online community, 48 Days Eagles. Well, here we are 3 years later. We have about 1,100 people in there. And they pay $48 a month. So again, just quick math, we have surpassed where we were 3 years ago. And here comes 2020. And all of a sudden, nobody can have live events. If things had just gone as normal, I would have been caught in a predicament like everybody else. 7 events. We already made prior commitments. People booked their flights and all that. It'd be a lot of challenges. As it was, I was perfectly positioned. And what happened this year did nothing but fuel the model that we had moved to. That's how I always look at change. Even if it's unexpected and unwelcome, I'm still looking, what does this make possible? And just seeing the opportunities instead of seeing those as obstacles and dead ends. What am I going to move to? And that's just one of many examples. But my whole world has changed, dramatically in the 20 years. And I'm anticipating the next 20 and the exciting things that we're going to be able to do.
Right. I just interviewed a futurist and she was telling me all about the technology. I'm like, oh, goodness. Okay. But don't you feel like, or let me ask you if you do, that initial hit of like, oh, no, now I can't do what I'm doing. Does it take you aback? Does it take you a little while before you see the opportunity instead of just feeling like hurt that, you can't run events anymore or whatever happens?
Oh, it's a very legitimate question. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I was frustrated. I thought, you idiots,
Yeah.
here I am bringing all this commerce to our town. I'm a good guy in the community. I'm trying to help everybody and you're going to shut me down, tell me I can't do this. And I had politicians and all kinds of people reach out and say, this is government overreach. We need to fight this. Well, I'm still working through the details on that property, but instead of expending a lot of negative emotional energy, that's not my style to stay in that space. It's okay. That's not working, but I'll bet I can figure out something that will work. So that's always my approach. But yes, without doubt, there's that initial knee-jerk reaction. You turkeys, how can you possibly do this to me? And this is what I'm used to doing. But again, we've seen that all through history. Change initiates new things. Here's another quick example, Jamie. I don't know if you even know this. We just moved to Florida just a few weeks ago.
No.
So we moved from Tennessee. So in Tennessee, I loved our property there. And outside my office, we had a bronze eagle that I had international sculptor do for us. It had 48 feathers on it, all the symbolism, and it was my inspiration. So I'd look out and see that eagle just coming off a branch. It was a bronze eagle. Terribly inspiring, just motivated me. I loved it. Well, yesterday morning, I'm sitting in my office here in Florida, right here at my computer, and I turned my head, looked out the window, out across our swimming pool and out on the lake. Here's an eagle circling. I stood up and walked over. The eagle circled just right out of the movies, went down, and came up with like an 18-inch fish, brought it up on my yard and sat there and ate his breakfast. Now, you got to be kidding me. I was looking at something that was static, that was just an image of, and here I am looking at the real thing. And it's one of those metaphors. It reminds me, I wonder how many other things there are in my life that I think are really good, but I'm not seeing what could be even better. And I'm always expecting those things.
I got goosebumps from that. I love stories like that. And 2020 has sort of given us a bunch of punches in the guts as a whole in general. And to recalibrate, like you said, I feel like we know we need to do it, but sometimes it's hard when you're in it, especially after you got punched in the gut. So how do you really navigate through that? So you said you don't stick there for very long, but what do you do? Do you just recalibrate and change your thought pattern, or you have other people talk about the positives? How do you actually do that?
It's a combination of those things. The first thing I do is look internally, take a fresh look at who am I, what am I all about, where am I going, how am I going to get there? But I also really take seriously the old Jim Rohn adage, we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So I reach out. And that's the thing. You and I are talking. My goodness, how long have we been friends? I immediately reach out to people who I know, love, and trust and get their input. So I don't feel alone in the process. I think that's something that we see too often where people, they feel alone. I'm the only one going, no, let's reach out, connect. So I link arms with people who are smarter than I am and who will encourage me and cheer me on. Now that has to be really intentional because a lot of people are around people who are whiners and naysayers and full of criticism. Gee, things are bad. You better believe it, they're bad. The economy's bad. Yeah, you better believe it. Those politicians don't know what they, if you hang around that, it's going to accelerate those feelings. So I make sure that I control the input, what I'm listening to, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, so that it moves me forward instead of trapping me there.
Yeah, and you must have so much as far as wisdom in regards to that, because you've been doing that for a long time, right? I feel like I'm just newer to the game of trying to not control my thoughts, but recalibrate, like I was saying beforehand, because I grew up in a very critical household where everything was a bit negative. And so the patterns, the neuroscience, I go there more often than I want to. So do you feel like you've gotten way better at doing those specific things after, 20, 30 years of being in business versus when you first started?
Yeah, and great question. I think it's just like toning a muscle. If we don't use it, it becomes very limp. But if we use it, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. I think our thinking in a direction like that is the same way. I don't think you have to just resign yourself to be a negative thinker. No, you can exercise your ability to think in other ways. And it's not just some airy-fairy PMA, positive mental attitude. It really is exercising the thinking that pulls you forward rather than keeps you static, or worse, allows you to fall back. Yeah, it's a daily practice. Part of that is I am very protective of the first 2 hours of the day. I mean, to me, that is the most critical time. Emerson wrote about the first hours, the golden hour, the rudder of the day, and I really think that it is. So I'm very careful about what I allow into my mind. I don't get up and grab my phone. I never have my phone in our bedroom. We don't have a TV in there, never have. I don't get up and look at emails or text or turn on the news or get a paper, anything like that at all. I want to make sure that all I allow into my brain early in the morning, those first 2 hours, I exercise, I meditate. Went for a long walk this morning. I listened to a Jaime Masters podcast, and then I came back and I was ready to start the day.
And you can come from a point of not bombardment of everybody else's opinions and what they need. You've been doing that for a long time, the 2 hours every day?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I went through a real big business crash 30 years ago, a little more, 32 years ago. And it was at that point that I thought, my mind is a sitting duck for negative thinking. I owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. The IRS is standing in my driveway. I don't have a car, I don't have a house. And that negative thinking can either take root and grow, or I can purposely plant positive thoughts and they'll nurture and grow. That's when I started doing that 2 hours a day, no less than that. And it had such a profound impact on me, I've never quit.
What advice do you have for people that are sort of in the 48 days process, right? Because there's a lot of learning about yourself as you're going through it, like what you did with your morning routine. But to be able to start going and pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, and then, the judge voice comes in, like you said, it's a lot of internal game. What advice do you have for people that are trying to do this for the first time?
To do that process of making sure you're allowing yourself to be exposed to positive things that are going to nurture you and pull you forward. I mean, look at the divisiveness and criticism that we've been exposed to this year is just unlimited, unbelievable out there. If you have that as constant input, you will then think more of the same. Even our social media feeds, that's not neutral stuff that comes along. It accelerates whatever it is you already are thinking and looking at. So if you're right wing, you're going to get that information. Politically, it picks up on that. If you're thinking about getting a new mattress, boom, all of a sudden you're starting to get feeds on that. So it accelerates what you're already thinking about. If you control what you are thinking about, then you'll get more of the same. So you can do that. You really can just be intentional about that. And it just breaks my heart when I see people just get sucked into that negativism that feeds on itself. But they allow themselves to be around people like that. They have the TV on too much. They're listening to voices that are accelerating that kind of thinking. You can change that. You can change it today.
It's funny. I had given my best friend growing up your book also back in the day. Now she does actually have work she loves, just so we know. But she told me the other day that she's on a criticism detox. And I was like, that's great. I should probably do that too, right? It was just a 1 week thing, but she's like, I'm noticing every little nuance, because sometimes it's just so habit that we don't even have that self-awareness piece at first, right?
Oh, it is. And that's such I love that, a criticism detox. I love the books that talk to us about digital minimalism and the social dilemma that's been so popular. We can choose how much of that we allow in, and we can certainly do that. You want to stay away from criticism, make sure it doesn't come out of your mouth, and you'll hear less of it from those around you.
Definitely. So what do you do to meditate? Because I love meditation, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like, yeah, but I can't meditate. Like that's usually the thing I hear almost every time.
It's a challenge, especially, for those of us who are in this entrepreneurial space, because we have so many things that are we don't just turn off things at 5 o'clock. We always have ideas, always have new projects we're working on. And I used to meditate, in air quotes, meditate, because I would be silent. Well, guess what happens when I sit silently? My mind starts racing. Here's what I do. I use Muse.
I just interviewed Ariel like 2 weeks ago. That's
Really?
awesome. Yes.
Okay.
And I gushed about it also. So I'm so grateful that you mentioned it. I also
Oh my
use
gosh.
Muse.
Do you? Well, I mean, it's just a game changer for people who want to meditate, because I can say that I meditated for 20 minutes when all I did was sit in a chair and think about my projects coming up. That's not meditation. But Muse calls you out. It rings your bell. You can't cheat. And so I use that. I put that on. And then that has been so helpful, though, in allowing me to learn the process of really slowing my mind down. And I love that, because I really do believe that is in slowing my mind down, even early in the morning when you think, things are gearing up. But slowing my mind down is a time where I really get, the very best of supernatural wisdom to come in. And I'm able to hear it where I'm not crowding it out with my own rapid thinking. Yeah, so I use that.
Yes, I'm so grateful.
And I use Ryan Holiday, The Daily Stoic, as my reading. Most days I have other things that I read as well, but I usually start the day off with that and using the Muse. Yeah.
I love that. I did not know that you were going to say that, because what it sounds like is that you've got the ability to slow things down. When you're saying, I sort of go through my negative thinking, of course, I externally shut off as much as I possibly can. Social media has been quite crazy this year. And so I do know the difference of stepping away from it, but inner thoughts are just harder to untangle. And I've totally felt that the Muse has helped me just slow it down. So I feel like I have a little more space in between. So it's not always just sort of, garbage.
Well, it's such a tactical mechanism in which to do that. Where usually when we're talking about our thinking, it's pretty elusive. It's just kind of out there. It's hard to really control that, but it's such a tangible way to really nail us. And I just absolutely love it.
That's funny. One of my clients just got one last week because of the interview that I did. And she's like, I got 12 birds. I'm like, I know, the birds are the best thing ever. Right? Like, keep going. Cause right. I had my son do it and he got a bazillion birds at the beginning. And I'm like, I suck at it. Right. And it's sticking with it and getting better after a long period of time. Even if you kind of suck at it at first, entrepreneurs, I know that's what you're going to think. And we don't like doing things that we suck at. I know. But it's huge.
Anything, though, takes time. We know we want everything instant these days, but I'm also committed to learning Spanish right now. Oh, my gosh. Because I so want to talk to the people around me here, and I just think it's amateurish of me not to be able to speak. So I'm taking lessons. I connect with Maria from Venezuela every Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and she really pushes me hard. But I'm committed to do it. Now, I would love to be able just to do that, in 2 weeks, just take a crash course. It's not going to happen that fast, but I'm really starting to see progress. And in doing so, that's so affirming to keep me going. But anything of value takes some initial work to get there. If it was quick, everybody would do it.
Well, that's why I loved your 48 days concept so much, because I was like, I can put 48 days in a box. Like I can know there's a beginning and there's an end, and then I will be better at the end of it, instead of trying to figure out what you love or your purpose or all those things are so nebulous. It's hard to navigate when I'm like, I don't know. What if I do a ton of work and I don't get anything out of it? Because it just is intangible to measure. So that's one of the reasons why I liked your book so much. I was like, okay, I'm a geek. I'm going to go 48 days. If it doesn't work, I can blame him, but but it really made a big difference, right? To be able to have the date do you feel like it's helped your clients and the people that have read the book because of that specific date?
Oh, Jaime. That is the magic. That brand has been like, when I came up with 48 days, it was like somebody poured gasoline on everything I was doing. Before that, certainly I did not write the first book on finding your passion, starting a business, finding work you love. There's tons of them out there, but that is the magic. And I am just so grateful that I stumbled upon that. And I really did stumble upon that. But that is, I mean, people say, you mean I really can change my life in 48 days? Yes, you can if you create a plan and act on it. But most people, if they want to get a better job or promotion or start a business or whatever, they're waiting until all the lights are green. Well, yeah, I was thinking about it 2 years ago, but I'm waiting until the kids graduate from high school. Gee, I'm waiting until the mortgage is paid off. I'm waiting until I get this other degree. And there's always things that are just ahead that prevent them from starting what they say. That no, I say 48 days. And when I work with somebody, we're really stringent on that. 48 days. Now, if at day 49, you're still doing what you were initially and you're enjoying that, that's fine. I'll still love you and you can be my friend. But I'm moving on because I work with people who take action in that period of time. And that is enough time. 48 days is enough time to assess where you are, get the advice and opinion of other people, identify 3 or 4 good options, do a little bit more research, choose one and act. You can do that whether it's deciding what house to buy, where your kids are going to go to college, what car you want to get, what business you want to start, where you want to apply for jobs. Any process you can put in that filter and you move through that, but it removes the excuse of all those things where people are just procrastinating for some reason or another.
Well, change is scary. Well, and it's funny that you said 2 days of Spanish. I was like, I just assumed you do 1 day of Spanish and not 2. But it's about the practice. It's about the meditating ideally every day, because that's how it makes incremental changes that adds up.
Yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I know you've had the Eagles group for a long period of time, and to build that community, especially right now in 2020 when we don't actually see people. I don't see people. I see, through a screen and stuff like that. Where do you think the Eagles group has sort of come through on 2020? Have they sort of banded together? Tell me a little bit more about what people are doing to try and get through this year.
They've banded together, which is really an important concept, because a lot of people with what happened this year have felt isolated, especially if they're not able to go to work anymore. They're not able to go to conferences. My gosh, think about all the conferences you and I used to see each other at. Not this year.
I know. That's why I've missed you. I'm like, I don't see anybody anymore. And thank you for emailing me.
Yeah. So there is that at least method of connection where you can see people, interact with them daily online. But the primary thing too is that people are receiving support and encouragement there where they're not getting it at other places. It gives people a way to reach out, to brainstorm, to have access to resources they would not otherwise. There's just a power in that kind of connection that most people don't have. And it also, this year, what happened is people being forced to look at new work models. Okay, that isn't working. I can't depend on that. You know what? We've had a lot of pastors reach out to us this year. They, you would think, they thought, I'll never be affected by economic changes or political changes. How would it affect me? I'm not a business. I'm something different. And they're saying, oh my gosh, what I thought was security was just an illusion. Because in as much as churches can still meet together online, but it's not the same. Yeah. And somebody sitting in the couch at home, when that virtual offering plate comes along, they may just think, I got a free pass, baby. So it's affected them dramatically. And we've got pastors reaching out saying, oh my gosh, please show me other ways where I can be more in the driver's seat and not as vulnerable in what I was doing. Yeah. So we've had a lot of different pockets. We've had physicians and attorneys and dentists and pharmacists and veterinarians, saying, this is impacting me in ways I didn't anticipate. How can I see a broader scope of the possibilities? So that's what has really fueled the growth of that community, yes.
Well, it makes me, my previous employee's son is a pastor. So now I want to know, what are you telling them to be able to get the message out and to make sure that they actually have a community when it's not in person? What sort of tips do you give them?
Well, and in terms of, we can certainly connect them together so they can get the mutual support, but then we can look at what are things that you're already doing that can be leveraged and positioned a little bit different, realigned a little bit. Coaching is an example. A lot of pastors say, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 25 years, but I never knew what to call it. I've never charged for it. So we just gently position them as a coach. Most of them have 2 or 3 really core messages that can easily be translated into a course, a seminar. I've got one pastor, I helped him transition into he is now a trainer for Fred Pryor. So Fred Pryor, you know the model. They send out 100,000 flyers and they say, we're going to deal with how to handle conflict in the workplace. Well, this guy is a wonderful facilitator. He walks in, their material, he facilitates, he gets a couple grand a day. He's working 10 days a month. He feels like he's on vacation, compared to what he was doing previously. Gee, no evenings, no weekends, nobody calling him at 2 a.m. in the morning because their teenager didn't come home. He feels like he's on vacation and he's making more money than he ever has in his life. So it's that kind of thing. Let's assess what you were doing, identify a couple things in there that are really your core skills, and we can just reposition those gently into something new that you've not experienced.
Yeah, I think reading the stories, especially when I was in my day job, that it was possible for other people, especially today, it seems even way more possible to be able to do anything online or do something that you actually care about and enjoy, because that's really possible instead of doing work you hate for the rest of your life. You only have one life. I know we have to start wrapping up. So what is one action, besides getting the book, what is one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Take a deep breath and look inside. 85% of the process of having a confidence of proper direction comes from looking internally first. We're so quick to look for external solutions. Gee, somebody's killing on an Amazon, I'll do that. Here's somebody's positioning themselves as a speaker, I'll do that. Well, that may be true, but it may be a Band-Aid solution and ultimately frustrating. Look inside. So you move into something that's authentic to you. And that can be done, in a 3-hour period. Take a breath, look inside. What are my unique skills and abilities, my personality tendencies, my recurring dreams and passions? From that, you can get a clear focus and then move forward with confidence into things that you enjoy, and it'll bring you more financial rewards as well. Put you on that track to be a millionaire.
I really appreciate that. And what's so funny is it just brought up the story where one of my friends told me to be a coach many, many, many years ago. And I was like, coaching is dumb. So then I had to get over all my own issues because it's what I was doing already for friends and family. But I was like, oh, I had such incongruent messages in my own internal head. Now I can't not do it. Like I would coach people in the grocery store if I could, right? Like it's that internal alignment of like, oh, now I understand, even though I had to get through my own crap in order to get there. But I appreciate you so much. Tell everybody where to find more about you online.
48 days. Best place to start, 48days.com. It's got the links to all the things that we do, all the fun things that we do from there.
Congratulations on moving to Florida. Enjoy your Eagles, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Always a delight to talk to you.
Thank you for listening and investing in yourself with your time. I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be forever grateful if you would be willing to leave a rating or review in whatever app you use for your podcast. I know that's what really bumps it up in the rankings. And I would so appreciate your time, especially if you've been a long-time listener. But of course, if you like this episode and you're brand new, thank you for being here too. Have an amazing, amazing day.